Well, as you can probably tell by my voice and by the title of this video, these movies literally made me sick. 2022 is just about done, and with 2023 right around the corner, I think it's time to have a retrospective look at the best and worst the film industry had to offer this past year. In this video, I'll be talking about my top 11 worst films of the year. And when I say worst, I mean least favorite. You people are smart, I shouldn't even have to say this. Each person has their own personal tastes, so if you see a film on my list that you like, that doesn't mean that I'm a terrible person who needs to burn in hell. And you probably will see at least one film on this list that you liked, because the vast majority of the films that I watch are either films that receive good reviews or just films that I think I would like. And so it's only natural that as a result, my worst films list would be filled with a bunch of films that I actually wanted to see because I've heard good things about them. Now that I explained all of that, please let me know in the comments what were your stinkers of the year. What are the films that you saw in 2022 that made you boil with rage or fall asleep out of boredom? I'm very interested in hearing your opinions. Alright, now with all the disclaimers out of the way, these are my top 11 worst films of 2022. Number 11. DC League of Super Pets. One more thing you might be wondering is, why top 11? Why not just a straight up top 10? Well, the reason is, out of all these 76 new releases that I've seen in 2022, there were exactly 11 movies that I truly despised. And I'm sorry, DC League of Super Pets, just because there were 10 other films that I liked less than you, doesn't mean you get to escape my wrath. Now, I do enjoy animated movies. I love Pixar, I love Disney, I love DreamWorks, but the animated movies that I love are films that are geared towards all ages, ones that can be enjoyed by kids and adults alike. DC League of Super Pets is a straight-up kids movie. There's nothing in it for adults. I checked it out because it received good reviews, and I like The Rock and Kevin Hart, but what I got was a disappointing, uninteresting, juvenile experience that I could have done without. The animation was okay, but nothing spectacular. The voice acting was lackluster, save for maybe Kate McKinnon, who plays a slightly entertaining villain, and I can't stress this enough, the jokes were just so childish. None of them actually landed, for me, as a grown-up. Overall, the film is pretty harmless for kids, but if you're an adult, you're not missing anything. Number 10. Prey. Here's where my previous disclaimer comes into play, and this won't be the last time, I assure you. Prey is a prequel to the Predator franchise, and it has received wide acclaim and has been praised as the best in the series since the original. Now, that may be true, but I wouldn't know because I have only ever seen the original. And I like it quite a lot. Much more than this one, obviously. But not only that, I just don't think this film was very good. At all. I guess there were some elements of it that I liked. I think the idea of setting the film in Comanche times was an inspired choice, and I liked the design of the actual Predator. His skull helmet was very intimidating. But at the end of the day, the film is ruined for me because of one very important thing: the main character. You have no idea how much an unlikable main character can kill a movie for me. She's dull, she's self-absorbed, and she's annoying. She has nothing going for her as a character, except, of course, for her being a woman, which in 2022 is suitable characterization, I suppose. The film devolves into yet another girl power, feminist, I'm a woman, hear me roar type of movie. Her driving motivation is to show the men of her tribe that she is just as good a hunter as they are, if not better. And of course, the film proves her right by the very end. Now, that alone usually won't bother me, but in here, her victory isn't believable. You mean to tell me that a skinny little girl Indian, who's smaller and weaker physically than the rest of the male hunters, was able to outfight and kill a beast that we see earlier in the film rip a grown-ass grizzly bear apart with his bare hands? Yeah, I'm not buying that movie. She should have been dead 50 times during the final fight alone. Also, I'm just sick and tired of all of this self-centered narcissistic nonsense. This is your strong female character 2022 edition. Naru doesn't fight for her tribe. She doesn't fight for anything greater than herself. She only fights for her own personal glory. It's just getting old, people. However, because the film is still competently made on a technical level, and because it didn't infuriate me as much as other films, it lands only at the number 10 spot on my list. Number 9. Don't Worry, Darling. Again, we're dealing with another film that suffers from obnoxious feminism. But instead of focusing on female empowerment, Don't Worry, Darling invests its time and energy into straight-up male bashing. I don't want to get too deep into spoiler territory in this video, so the only thing that I'll say about that is that after a certain twist reveal that occurs near the end of the second act, it becomes apparent that every single male character in this entire film is a straight-up monster who deserves none of our sympathy. No positive male role model in sight. All the men are scum. That alone would have been enough to place this film on my list, but it doesn't stop there. The story is dumb and doesn't make any sense, and the social commentary is A. wrong, and B. not portrayed effectively at all. I mean, they try to show this idealistic desert town where the men go to work and the women take care of the house, cook, clean, and all that as a dystopian hell. But the place actually seems pretty nice for the women themselves. The ladies get to hang out together all day, at the mall, by the pool, they take dance lessons together, they seem to be having a splendid time. I'd be willing to bet that the majority of women would take that lifestyle in a heartbeat if it was an option. But of course, I'm sure many women would disagree, as is your right. The reason the film is not lower on my list is because it's actually pretty well made on a technical level. The cinematography and the editing were actually not that bad, and Florence Pugh is always great, even in bad films. So these positive elements save it slightly, but the terrible story and overall message of the film are the reasons why it's one of the worst films I've seen all year. Number 8. Jurassic World Dominion. We're getting into the real heavy-duty shit right now, if it wasn't obvious. This film is 2 hours and 41 minutes long. That should be enough for you to understand that this film is not worth your time. But on top of that, it's dull, stupid, and has worse visuals than the 30-year-old original, which is actually kind of impressive if you think about it. It has one decent action scene in it, I'll give it that, but the vast majority of the film is just, well, boring. The story didn't interest me in the slightest. It moves at a snail's pace, and it felt less a movie about dinosaurs and more a movie about frickin' locusts. Who wanted this? The characters are one-dimensional. The movie doesn't do a good job in making me care about any of them. They even bring back the legacy characters from the original Jurassic Park and do absolutely nothing with them. They're just there. They don't serve any purpose. They don't add anything of value to the story. They're literally just there so we can say, "Oh, I like those guys. Yay!" The epitome of lazy storytelling. But hey, at least they don't kill him off like other franchises did, and even though they really had no reason to be in this movie, and even though I just said that putting them in the film is lazy and dumb, at least I like these characters. So the third act, where these characters have the most screen time together, was slightly more enjoyable than the first two acts, where the story mainly focuses on this clone girl who is so forgettable that I literally forgot she was a thing prior to writing this script. God, this movie sucks. But the fact that it has a bunch of characters that I actually like, and one legitimately great action scene in the middle of the film, means that it only lands at number 8 on my list. Do yourselves a favor, just watch Jurassic Park. Screw this movie. Number 7. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Oh, here we go again.
Alright, I get the picture. Needless to say, people did not like my opinions on this film when I made my review of it. I understand that. I mean, I personally think this was a boring, bloated, preachy, cliched mess of a film that focused too much on honoring a dead celebrity and calling white men evil colonizers than actually telling a good story, but to each his own. In all seriousness, if you liked the film, then I'm genuinely happy for you. It's possible this movie just wasn't made for me. So it's okay if you disagree with me. It's okay if you think my opinions are stupid. But a whole bunch of people commented on my video and accused me of lying, of not actually meaning what I said, and only saying the things that I said solely for the views. So allow me to clarify this issue right here and now. What I said about the film was my genuine opinion, and I stand by it. I found Shuri to be an underwhelming protagonist. I thought the movie constantly pandered to the audience through the use of over-the-top elements from African culture. I mean, the invisible gates of Wakanda open via ancient water bongos. This is supposed to be the most advanced civilization on Earth. Surely a simple button would do. The movie is way too long, it's boring, the action is dull, the visual effects are mediocre, and the acting wasn't very good either. And I didn't even mention how much of a letdown Ironheart is as Iron Man's replacement. If you want to hear my full thoughts on Wakanda Forever, then check out my video on it. I go into further detail there. There's just one thing about that video that I regret. I said this was the worst superhero movie I've seen all year, which is true. But in my video, I also implied that I saw the movie Morbius, which I didn't. I saw literally every other superhero movie this year except for Morbius, and I apologize for that. I'm sure that if I had seen it, it would have been even lower. I've heard only terrible things. But as I said before, I don't actively seek out garbage, so I didn't go see it. Please keep that in mind when you watch my video. When all said and done, I found Wakanda Forever to be a terrible film, and that's why it's number 7 on my list. Number 6. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. This film looked like it was gonna be interesting at first. It was supposed to be this fun yet suspenseful black comedy thriller murder mystery type of film, and it was produced by A24. They never make bad movies, I'm told. Let this film be a lesson to you. No production company is perfect. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies was torture. I hated every single second of that movie. Just like in Prey, the thing that kills this movie for me are the characters. Only instead of having just one insufferable lead, in here we have 7. 7. And I hated all of them. They're whiny, obnoxious characters who we're ostensibly supposed to care for, but they're just a bunch of mean teenagers who are so dumb that they think it's a good idea to meet at a house where they know a hurricane is about to hit. So, what do you think, Gen Z? Are you satisfied with your representation in this movie? What the f*** are you doing there? Get out of the state! Now, all of that would be fine if they had some redeeming qualities to them, or if they would have gone through meaningful progression and changed their stupid ways. But no, they never change. They start stupid, they end stupid. This whole movie is stupid. And oh god, don't even get me started on the absolutely asinine reveal at the end. I've heard people say that they actually liked this reveal, that it was funny, that it serves as a nice bow tie to the whole experience. But if it wasn't obvious by now, my biggest problem with the film is that the characters are stupid. And if you thought these characters were stupid before, then the reveal just makes them look even stupider. Bodies, bodies, bodies? More like stupid, stupid, stupid. Do you think I said the word stupid enough times in this segment? Maybe I didn't understand it. Maybe them being stupid was the whole point. But that's not how I saw it. To me, this movie was just one big waste of my time, which was spent with a bunch of characters that I didn't like at all, with the reveal just making the whole experience even more sour. It's truly a miracle a movie this bad was able to escape the top 5. Or maybe it just means there's no hope left for humanity. Either or. Number 5. Studio 666. I'm starting off the top 5 worst films of 2022 with a light-hearted one. This is the so bad it's good film of 2022. I actually considered not having it on the list at all. Maybe even talk about it on my best movies list as a guilty pleasure. But at the end of the day, this film is so ridiculously, horrendously, and hilariously awful that I couldn't not have it on this list. This is the Foo Fighters movie. Now, I like the Foo Fighters quite a lot, but maybe they should just stick to making music. This is probably the worst made film of the year. This is supposed to be a horror comedy a la Evil Dead, where the Foo Fighters go to a haunted house in order to write their new album, and Dave Grohl gets possessed by a demon. But the film is not scary at all, and it's hilarious in all the wrong ways. The acting in this film is the biggest joke of all. These guys are not actors, and it shows. The production is terrible and the execution is mind-numbing. The only slightly good thing about this movie are the gore effects. There are a bunch of gory kills in this movie and the effects work for them was really well done. But the results are dampened by the terrible lighting, which made the scenes feel flat and fake, so the kills just don't look as good as they could have looked. I guess I would recommend this film for people who just want to have fun with a so bad it's good movie, but even with that going for it, Studio 666 is way longer than it should have been. It gets repetitive and it drags at certain places, there's too much talking, and I'm just sitting there waiting for the really fun and absurd stuff to happen, which they do, eventually, but I don't think the film goes all out like it should have. At the end of the day, Studio 666 is hilarious dumb fun, but even for a guilty pleasure, I still can't deny the fact that it's an objectively bad movie. And the number 5 on my list. Number 4. 2000 Mules. Now, full disclosure before I talk about this documentary, if it wasn't obvious by now, I am a conservative. I was disappointed with the results of the 2020 election. And yes, that election seemed a bit iffy. So when Dinesh D'Souza released a documentary claiming that he has definitive proof that the 2020 election was indeed stolen from Donald Trump, I was very intrigued in seeing what he found. So I watched the documentary. And he has found absolutely nothing. This is the worst documentary of the year. First and foremost because it's just not that interesting. The entire movie is just Dinesh D'Souza sitting in a room with 3 other people and they're just talking. And that's it. That's the whole movie. Basically nothing happens. We do see some security footage, but that brings me to the other problem with the film, which is that it's dishonest and manipulative. The movie claims to show definitive evidence of people stuffing multiple ballots into multiple drop boxes illegally. But if that's the case, then why do you choose to show each person only once and only at one drop box? You claim to have security footage. Surely you can show us the same guy more than once and in more than one place. Every time they showed a new person, I was waiting for them to do that incredibly basic thing that they needed to do in order to prove their point, but no, they didn't do that. It's either they made a really bad mistake, or they're lying. I can't think of a third option. And it doesn't really matter which one it is, the movie suffers regardless. In my opinion, this movie tries to trick the audience into thinking they're saying one thing, but actually showing them something completely different. Just because I support Trump, and just because I think the 2020 election was strange, doesn't mean I think it was stolen. This film claims to show proof that it was, but it just doesn't. On top of the fact that this movie has pretty much nothing going on in it, and you've got a recipe for one of the worst films of the year. Why is it not even lower? Well, because the last 3 films on this list are a very special bunch. Number 3. Moonfall. You thought Bodies, Bodies, Bodies was stupid? Well, this is the pinnacle of stupidity right here, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't expect anything more from the director of 2012, so at least I wasn't surprised. It starts out as mindless dumb fun. Something pushes the moon out of orbit and into a collision course with Earth. So it's up to a ragtag group of individuals to stop the moon and save the world. Sounds like a simple but action-packed adventure for me to enjoy. But at a certain point, the obvious cliches, the terrible acting, and the laughably bad special effects lost their charm and just became annoying. Or at worst, boring. Also, the movie decides to shoot itself in the knee even more with an overly convoluted reveal that bogs the whole film down. It's also way too long. Seriously, what is up with 2022 and overly long, pointlessly stretched out films with zero substance to them? This year had some slogs in it, people, let me tell ya. And Moonfall was the worst of them all. I looked at the screen for over 2.5 hours and felt completely empty inside. Just a straight up bad film with no redeeming qualities. Now, as bad as all of these films were, especially that last one, the top 2 films on my list were the creme de la creme of terribleness. The worst of the worst. We have reached rock bottom with these 2 movies. It was really hard to split the 2. Both of them are incredibly awful. But at the end of the day, this is the film that I placed at number 2. Number 2, Pinocchio. Oh my god, what a gigantic waste of a film. The Disney remakes are all pretty bad, but Pinocchio is the worst one of the lot. They basically took a beloved classic, stripped it of its charm, soul, personality, and everything else that made it good, added a bunch of filler that actively made the film worse, and voila! You've got the Pinocchio remake. There is absolutely nothing good about this movie. No reason to watch it over the original whatsoever. It added a bunch of characters that are completely pointless to the story. It sugarcoats Pleasure Island, one of the most memorable scenes from the original. They just made it bland. The CGI is bad. The acting is bad. They add a pointless backstory to Geppetto that doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever. Tom Hanks doesn't do a good job. Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays a horrible CGI cricket. They added a scene where Pinocchio walks down the street and he just stops and stares at a pile of shit on the ground for like 2 minutes for no reason. This movie was just painful. This is the only film this year that I watched at 1.5 times speed, just so it'll finish faster. It's an ugly, boring, and utterly redundant motion picture that fails miserably in justifying its own existence, pushing itself further into the grave by unnecessarily being a worse version of the original Disney animation. I wish I had more to say about it, but I honestly don't. Only that I wish I hadn't seen it in the first place. But even a film this bad, this boring, and this pointless couldn't quite beat the cherry on top of this crap cake known as the worst films of 2022. There is one film that managed to be even worse than that one, at least for me. So without further ado, here it is. Number 1, Bros. It was close between this one and Pinocchio, but at the end of the day, Bros is my worst film of 2022. This movie sucks. Dick. And yeah, a gay romantic comedy doesn't seem like something I personally would connect with, but I'm an open-minded fella. I want to give movies their chance to show me what they got. So I watched Bros, and it deserved to flop at the box office. It was just an utterly terrible movie on all accounts. For starters, this is supposed to be a comedy, but I didn't laugh once. This movie was an utter snooze fest from beginning to end. The jokes didn't land, the music was the blandest stock rom-com music I've ever heard in my life, and above all else, I just couldn't get into the story. As a straight guy, I like watching pretty girls. That's just what straight guys do. And believe it or not, pretty girls, it's something that is missing from gay orgies. This movie has so many gay orgies, it'll make your head spin. And they didn't do it for me, to say the least. This whole movie about promiscuous guys having sex with one another, not my cup of tea. Also, the main character is an obnoxious, unlikable narcissist. Boy, that's fresh. Sorry to break it to you, Billy Eichner, but it's okay to not be yourself in certain instances. As a matter of fact, it's practically a necessity sometimes. Being 100% yourself at all times is a terrible thing to encourage, because it'll most likely just drive people away from you and you'll find yourself isolated and alone. Just like the main character finds himself in the movie. But of course, the movie portrays it as the world being the problem, and not him. Also, really young kids shouldn't be taught about sexuality at schools. Period. Lincoln wasn't gay, and this movie completely blows. I hated this movie with a passion. But not with as much passion as the lead actor hated straight people, as he blamed them for the film's financial failure because they didn't go to the theater to watch his movie. But I don't understand why he was so surprised. There's nothing about this film that is geared towards straight people. Don't be shocked when straight people don't go and see it, because there's nothing in it for them. So why would they see it? All of this, and so much more, is why Bros is my least favorite film of the year. The absolute worst 2022 had to offer. There have been some utter turds in 2022. Fortunately, there have also been some amazing films in 2022 as well, and these are the ones I'll talk about next week. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments what were your least favorite films of the year. Subscribe to my channel so you won't miss my best of list when it comes out. And of course, have a good one.